Hey guys, welcome to Peripheral Vision, and this is Playing with Power, where we take a look at a group of games on Nintendo consoles tied together with a certain theme. And this episode is Super Nintendo Disney games. That's right, Disney games on the SNES. And as many of you know, the NES had an impressive library of Disney licensed games, and to a degree, the Super Nintendo carries that into the 16-bit era. But this is where the quality of these Disney games gets a little bit mixed, as you'll see in this video. So, without further ado, let's take a look and start off with Timone and Pumbaa's Jungle Games. Timone and Pumbaa's Jungle Games is a minigame compilation released in 1997. The games included are Sling Shooters, Hippo Hop, Burper, and Jungle Pinball. Originally, this game was released on PC, featuring smoother animations, voice acting, and an extra game, Bug Drop, which would have played like Kirby's Avalanche. You start at a menu, which includes some fun little animations if you click around, as well as general difficulty and sound options. There is a high scoreboard, but keep in mind that because of the lack of an internal save battery, the board will only show scores from your current play session. The games themselves are very average. Sling Shooters is a shooting gallery style game with a jungle backdrop that works well enough, but I think it could have been improved by adding more locations or even the ability to use the Super Nintendo mouse to control the cursor. Hippo Hop is probably the weakest in my opinion. It is very similar to Frogger in its gameplay, having Timone travel across a river and back again. The problem is that its slow pace really makes the repetitive nature of what you're doing stand out. Also, the landing detection can be finicky. Burper is a shooting, or rather burping game, that has Pumbaa firing at falling bugs and other random things. This one kept my interest the longest, and aside from Pumbaa's slightly slow moving, it's pretty fun. Finally, there's Jungle Pinball, which is just a pinball game with a jungle motif. Nothing here is really going to blow your mind. Now you'll notice that from the gameplay footage, I'm not very good at pinball, but I don't think that it would be very good even for an expert. Now, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't fun to be had with this game, especially if you enjoy the characters. But after I got finished, I was left with this tremendous feeling of meh. The Jungle Book. Alright folks, we're staying in the jungle with The Jungle Book. Released in 1994, nearly 30 years after the original film, The Jungle Book is a mess. The general premise is that it's a platforming game featuring Mowgli running around the jungle. You can fend off enemies by jumping on them or firing one of his infinite stream of bananas. You can also acquire extra, more powerful weapons, such as coconuts or other fruits. You can technically collect the gems you'll see scattered throughout the level, but be warned that the only benefit of doing so is that if you collect them all, you'll get a different set of ending credits. What's interesting about the SNES version in that regard is that in the Genesis and NES versions of the game, you're required to collect those gems in order to progress. I don't know what made the designers change this, but it makes the gems in this game feel largely pointless. Unfortunately, that's not the only design aspect that falters here. Remember when I said the game was a mess? Well, what I was referring to is the level design. The screen constantly looks cluttered, with the foreground and background never being clear. You'll jump for a vine or platform only to realize that it's not really there for you to jump to. You also have to contend with tiny little enemies and more than a few leaps of faith. Now, don't get me wrong, the game looks good in a strictly visual sense. It just doesn't make for a good play environment. The music's fun though, and the songs that they lift from the movie will get stuck in your head. With a lot of refinement, this game could have been at least a passable platformer, but as it is, I can't really recommend it to anybody. Oh, and I hate you, Ka the Snake. I hate you so much. Mickey Mania, The Timeless Adventures of Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mania, The Timeless Adventures of Mickey Mouse is a mouthful. Or should I say, a mouseful. Ha! I'm clever. Released in 1994, Mickey Mania was originally intended to be part of a promotion celebrating Mickey's 65th anniversary, but was released a year late. Although a little late to the party, the game still does a lot to show off Mickey's rich history. You see, the premise is that you play through levels inspired by classic Mickey Mouse cartoons, 6 in total, including fan favorites like Steamboat Willie and Mickey and the Beanstalk. Something to note about the Super Nintendo version is that there is a level missing from the lineup. All versions of Mickey Mania, other than the SNES one, have a 7th level based off the cartoon The Band Concert. Another sort of odd difference is that this version has loading screens in between sections of levels. They don't bother me that much, but I know some people really get rubbed the wrong way by them. For its omissions and additions, however, this is still a really great game. But it's kind of hard for me to recommend to most people. Let me explain. The game looks and sounds beautiful. Everything about it brings you into the world, which makes sense because this is actually the first game with animations worked on by actual Disney animators. The controls are fine, although hitboxes can be a bit wonky. The word that comes to mind when describing Mickey Mania is polished. Now, on the flip side, another word to describe this game is insane. The levels are pretty short, and if this were any other platformer of the era, you could breeze through it in an hour or so. But because of the intensity and many deaths, it will take you a while. So if you're a highly skilled gamer, or you just really love Disney, this game is a good time. But maybe bring a Game Genie. Aladdin. Speaking of genies, that brings us to the final game of the video, Aladdin. Released in 1993 and developed by Capcom. Now the reason I bring up the developer is because in the 8 and 16-bit era, Capcom was a name you wanted to be attached to your Disney game. With a track record of DuckTales, The Little Mermaid, Chippendales, and more, Capcom knew how to make a licensed game. So is Aladdin part of that group? Yes it is. The thing about Capcom Disney games is that they don't necessarily break the mold. They give a solid, consistently fun experience with characters you love, usually to an awesome soundtrack. This game delivers on that. Now, the plot of the game follows the movie pretty closely, with a few additional areas. You play as Aladdin, of course, platforming through the levels with a few carpet riding segments to break up the monotony. The gameplay has this bouncy quality that really gives Aladdin a sense of weight that I personally enjoy. You aren't strictly limited to jumping though, as you can gather apples to stun enemies and a sheet that allows you to slowly descend. You definitely should get that sheet. It's pretty awesome. You'll notice that red and green gems are scattered throughout the levels. Now, if you gather 100 of those, you get an extra notch on your health meter. Like I said, nothing really breaking the mold here. But it's fun. It's also pretty short and easy. Capcom didn't typically break out the Mega Man difficulty in its Disney titles. I've always considered it a good game to sit and unwind with. Oh, I almost forgot the music. It's great. It's Capcom renditions of Alan Menken. How can you go wrong with that? Overall, Aladdin is a good game, if maybe a bit paint by numbers. Word around the playground is that the Genesis version is better, but nah, Nintendo is what Genesis isn't. Well, that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed checking out some Disney games on the Super Nintendo, and I will be continuing this series. In fact, I will have more videos of Disney Super Nintendo games, as well as more playing with powers on other topics. For example, maybe one on Looney Tunes games, or one on a specific franchise and their entries on Nintendo consoles. But as we go along, we'll see what happens with that. And if you have any suggestions for games or series or whatever that you would like me to do on this, please leave them down below. And as always, later days, and keep playing with power.